Let's make a VR game together, and in this new episode we are going to analyze the energy cube using a socket interactor. Then be able to restrict it to a certain tag and add a poke interaction to open or close a door by the push of a button. As always, feel free to subscribe down below for the next episode about climbing and controlling the spaceship with a wheel and a lever. And if you'd like to support my work and get access to the Result Unity project, I will leave in the description my Patreon. But without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so remember in a previous video we did this interaction where we could break this litter block into pieces, and so what this created is made this energy cube appears. But now my goal is to be able to analyze this energy cube somewhere else in the seed, now that we can move around using the awesome locomotion system that we made earlier. But anyway, to be able to analyze this cube, I'm going to use the socket interactor. So the big question is, how can we use a socket interactor? And now, in my case, what I'm going to do is go in the sci-fi style modular pack that we have. Then if I go to prefab, machine, we have here a bunch of machines that we can choose from. And I think I'm going to drag this projector 2 in the scene. Okay, it is kind of big right now, so let's press on R and scale it down a little bit. And I'm going to move it near here, right there. I think it looks good. And we can maybe increase it on the Y-axis. Perfect. So this is the place where the player will be able to analyze the cube. So what I want is the player to drop the cube on top of here, this little thing, and be able to snap the cube right in place. Now to use a socket interactor to do so, it is really simple. What we can do is right click, create empty, call this socket interactor. There you go. Click then on add component and add here the XR socket interactor. Now, a XR socket interactor basically works like a direct interactor, which we are using on the right controller to be able to grab object. But this one actually don't need any XR controller. It will basically try to grab anything at any given time. And what we can use is another mesh material to kind of show the object before it is stuck to a certain place. So what I'm going to do is right click on the project folders, create materials, call this one socket preview. We can go at the top to Universal Render Pipeline Unlit. And I'm going to set it not to opaque, but to transparent. Drag the color to be something a bit yellowish. And we can maybe reduce the alpha value to make it transparent. Beautiful. Now let's drag this socket preview inside the over mesh material. Perfect. And now, believe it or not, but after clicking on add component, adding a sphere collider, that we can set to maybe 0.1 on the radius and make it trigger. It is done. We have finished with the socket interactor setup. So as you can see, very simple. Now, of course, I want to place kind of the projector at this place right there, and we could do so by dragging the socket interactor as a child of the projector. But what I don't really like is that the projector has a scale which is a bit weird right now. And I found out that it is best to actually set the socket interactor as a child of a parent which has a scale of 1, 1, 1. So what I'm going to do is right click on the projector and click on create empty parent. Now, as you can see, this has created a parent on the projector, which is located at the same place, but which has a scale of 1, 1, 1. We can call this one energy analyzer. There you go. And now we can drag the socket interactor under this energy analyzer. We can then set the position to 0, 0, 0 so that it is located at the same place. And we can maybe increase the socket interactor right there. Now looking back, I think that we've made a mistake with the radius. I don't know why I set it so small. So let's maybe set it to 0.1 instead of 0.01. And as you can see, it is now looking a bit better. And there you go. Now let's see if this works by clicking on play. Okay, so let's grab our cube here and let's try to place it on top of the analyzer. And as you can see, this is really cool. When I approach the cube, it is showing me a little over preview with the yellow transparent material that we made earlier. And when I release the grip button, ta-da! As you can see, it snaps directly the cube into place. And as you can see, this works really great. But right now, we have still a big problem. Because at the moment, this can work with the cube like we intend to. but this works as well for any grabbable object that we made. Now, as you can see, we can do the same and snap it to place as well. And that's something that maybe you want in your game, but in my case, I only want the player to be able to snap the energy cube, because otherwise this would create a lot of gameplay problem. So for example, the player will be able to cheat to go to the last step of the game by simply dragging the first meteor to this place right there before having to kind of break the big meteor and show the blue cube. Now, anyway, to restrict the socket interactor, we could basically go in the interaction layer mask and create a particular layer, but I think that there is a better way to do so. And this method is to override the XR socket interactor with a XR socket tag interactor. That's right. So let's remove this XR socket interactor and instead let's create a new component that I will call XR socket tag interactor. Now let's open this script in Visual Studio. Okay, so as the name suggests, the goal of this script is to basically do the same as the XR socket interactor, but only restrict the socket to a certain tag. Now to do so, we need to add at the top using Unity engine.xr.interaction.toolkit, and instead of mono behavior, we want to override the XR socket interactor. This means that now everything that is in the XR socket interactor is inside the XR socket tag interactor as well, but now we are able to override some of the function. Now, in my case, I'm going to add a public string called target tag. We can remove both the start and the update function, and the function that we want to override is the can over. So let's write override, and as you can see, there is a list of everything that we can override, which is kind of long. But anyway, what we want to override is here this can over with the XR over interactable. There you go. Now by default, it will return the base can over function. And so the last thing that we can do is simply check that the interactable has the target tag with and interactable.transform.tag equals target tag. Beautiful. Now, last but not least, let's do this not to over, but to select with public override can select. There it is. And do exactly the same. So I'm simply going to copy and paste here this last element on the line. And everything is already done. Just like this, we've successfully managed to override the XR socket interactor to make it work with only one particular tag. So let's save and go back to Unity. Okay, so as before, let's set up here the over mesh material with the socket preview that we added. There you go. And as you can see, the target tag is right there. So what we can do is go maybe to our energy cube, which is under the space-ways breakable right there. This is the one. And as you can see, the tag was set to meteor, which is not what we want. Let's click on add tag plus and create a tag called energy. Beautiful. Now let's go back to the energy game object and set it to its good energy tag. Then go to the socket interactor, and for the target tag, let's set it to energy. Beautiful. Now if we click on play, let's find out if only the cube can be snapped to this position. Okay, so here you go. As you can see, I can still approach the blue cube and snap it to the good place, but when doing the same with the meteor, it does not work. So this means that we successfully managed to create a socket interactor which only works with a given tag. So congratulations, but now it is time to go to the next interaction, because now that we've placed this energy cube to the socket interactor, what we want is be able to push a button to open this door. So let me show you how we can do this. Okay, so first thing first, to make a button with the latest XR interaction toolkit, it is very simple. And actually, if we go to the sample XR interaction toolkit and again to the prefab list, if we go to the UI 3D, as you can see, you will be able to find here a push button, which you can directly use. And this is what I'm going to do on this project. So for this, I'm going to right click, go to 3D object and create a cube and scale it down like this. I'm going to place it right there, and I think it will be better to change its material. So I'm going to create a new material called white. And by default, as you can see, the color is white. So there is nothing to do more on this material except to drag it to the cube that we made. And there it is, our beautiful white material. Now, anyway, let's drag here the push button in our scene. There it is. So right now we could drag here the push button under the cube that we made earlier. But in the same way as for the projector, because the cube has not a scale of 1, 1, 1, this is not really great. So instead, I'm going to right click, create empty parent, call this button stand. Beautiful. We can call now the white cube to stand and drag the push button under the button stand and reset its position. Now we simply need to drag it up like this. And there you go. Now our button stand is finished and is correctly placed. And as you can see, I think it looks really, really great. So now let's find out if this button is working by clicking on play. Okay, so I'm in front of the button, but as you can see, even if the color changes when I try to hover it, nothing happens and I cannot push it down. And this is because we don't have any interactor to do so. Right now, we have the direct and the teleportation interactor, but if we want to poke a button, we need to add a poke interactor, and this is what we are going to make right now. Okay, so to make a poke interactor, it is really simple. We need to go to the XR origin, and under the right controller, let's right-click, create empty, and call this one right poke interactor. There you go. We can then click on add component and add here an XR port interactor. There you go. Now, as you can see, the only thing that needs to be set up on the XR poke interactor is the attach transform, which will be used for the default position to poke with any object. Now, in my case, I want this attach transform to be the top of the index finger. So what we can do is go under the right terminator end, and under the bones, we have here the pointer, and we can simply drag on the attach transform the last bone on the index finger. So this bone right there, we can simply drag it here, and there you go. Now everything is set up. What we can do now is do the same, but not on the right controller, but on the left one. So let's duplicate this game object, drag it under the left controller, rename it left poke interactor, and do the same, which is go in the bones of the left end, go under the pointer, and drag the last bone on the left end for the attach transform. Beautiful. Now everything is already set up, and just like this, we should be able to interact with this button. So let's click on play to find out if this works. And there you go. If I go near this button and that I use my index finger to try to push it, as you can see, it correctly goes down and push the button correctly. And as you can see, this works with two hands. It is really, really cool. Now, anyway, just to give you a little example of how this works, as you can see, this push button is simply using the XR simple interactable, which is the simplest form of an interactable with the XR interaction toolkit, but it uses here the XR poke filter to give the direction in which the button can move. So as you can see, the direction that is used is the negative Y axis. And anyway, to respond to the interaction of the player, the push button is using the XR poke follow affordance. Now, this is a bit more advanced, but the affordance system is a new system also made by Unity to kind of give some visual and audio feedback to the interaction of the player. Now, I've previously made a tutorial about it that you can watch over there. So if you want to learn more about the affordance system, go on and watch it. The link is in the description. And by the way, as you can see, there is also a color affordance system that is added to this button, which is the thing that is making this red part change color when we are interacting with it. And we will see later how to use this to actually give some sound effect when interacting with an object. But anyway, now that we are able to push a button, we of course want to use this to open this door right there. So let's see how we can do this. Okay, so to be able to open the door, if we select the door, as you can see, there is an animator on the door, which has an animator controller called frame door. Now, if we go to Windows, Animation, Animator, as you can see, this shows us here the animator, which is responsible to handle all of the animation. And now if we go to the parameters, we can see that there is a boolean called character nearby that is used to open the door. I guess that by default, the person that made the asset wanted to check if the player was nearby to open the door, which is kind of logical. And as you can see, it is the case because by default, the door is closed. but if the character nearby is set to true, it will then open the door, and only if the character nearby is set to false, it will then close the door and go back to the initial state. Now, anyway, what I'm going to do is just to be a bit more self-explanatory, rename this character nearby by open. There you go. And as you can see, by default, this has already renamed the condition as well. And what I want to do is be able to change these open parameters in our script when the button is pushed. So to do so, let's go to our push button. I'm going to click on add component, and we can add a component called button push open door. There you go. So this script will be really simple. At the top, we simply need to add the using Unity engine.xr.interaction.toolkit that you already know. And now we need two things, of course. We need a public animator called animator and a public string bool name, which we can already set to open, and is the boolean name which is used inside the animator. Now anyway, at the start of the game, we can get access to the XR simple interactable, which is used on the button, and on the select enter, we can add a new listener to open or close the door. So for this, I'm going to add a new function called toggle door open. There you go. And what this does is actually get the current state of the door with bool is open equals animator.get bool, then give our bool name, and then set the boolean to be the opposite of the is open value with animator.set bool name, and for the opposite of is open, we can simply write not is open. Beautiful. And so the last thing we need to do is hook this function inside the add listener. Now, if we simply copy this function and paste it over there, as you can see, it gives us an error because the select enters needs to have a parameter of type select enter event args. But as you already know, we can fix this by writing x little arrow to the right and calling directly the toggle open door like this. Beautiful. And now no more error and everything should work fine. We can remove the update function, save our script and go back to Unity. Okay, beautiful. Now last thing is to set the animator on the animator component to be the door animator. So let's lock the inspector, click here to highlight the door too and drag it here on the animator. Beautiful. We can now unlock the windows. And now by doing this, we should be able to open or close the door by simply pushing the button. So let's see how this works by clicking on play. Okay, here it is, the moment of truth. Let's try to push this button. And as you can see, it works beautifully. The door has now opened. And what's even cooler is that if I push the button again, it closed the door. Now, as you can see, this is super satisfying. Now, anyway, there is just one last issue that I want to fix with you is that, of course, we can now trigger the select event by pushing the button down. But right now, if we move our hands near the button and that we press on the grip button, as you can see, it also closed the button. Now, this is because with the XR simple interactable, we can trigger the select enter event with the poke, but also currently with the direct interactor. Now, if we want to remove this behavior, it's actually not that complicated. What we can do is go on our push button. And now in the XR simple interactable, if we go to the interaction layer mask, as you can see, the interaction layer mask is set to be default. What we can do is go to add layer and add a new layer called poke. Now let's go back to our push button, set the interaction layer mask to nothing and then to only poke. And finally, we need to go to the XR origin, right and left controller. We can select them both. And for the interaction layer mask, set them to nothing poke, so that the interaction will only works with the interactable that have the poke layer mask. And now, if we click on play, let's find out if we have managed to resolve this bug. Okay, I can still push the button, but now if I try to grab it, as you can see, it does not work anymore. So everything is working correctly. Congratulations, with this, we managed to create the two next interaction of our game which is be able to analyze here this little energy cube with a socket interactor and then open or close this door with the button. And there you go guys, hope you enjoyed this video and are ready for the next one about climbing and controlling the spaceship. Now make sure to subscribe if you'd like to support my work and get access to the Result Unity project. I will leave my Patreon in the description. Thank you for watching and see you very soon. Bye bye.